Keeping this League of Legends series going, I'm now going to shift my focus over to pretty much the two most prominent characters within Arcane, Vi and Jinx, and in discussing them, that brings Zaun a little more into the conversation, which adds an additional layer to discussion and dialogue around aesthetic and style. So let's go ahead and get into that. Hola, my name is X, and I like to experiment with fashion as well as talk about whatever the hell I want on social media whenever I feel like it. And in this video, I'm going to start off by exploring a bit of the contrasting relationship between the Piltover and Zaun aesthetic, as well as how that extends and manifests itself in a few of the characters, particularly Caitlyn, Vi, and Jinx. Just so we can kind of see some of the differences, some of what that also highlights as far as societal discussion and class conversation. So I might be entering my commentary era just a little bit. We're then going to move into some further elaboration on Vi and Jinx specifically and separately, going into what I find most interesting about their characters, going to do a review and analysis of the various skins that they have within the League of Legends game. Cool, now let's move straight into the discussion on some of the aesthetic as well as societal differences between the cities of Piltover and Zaun. So I already discussed Piltover in my last video on Jace and Caitlyn, but I'll do a little bit more elaborating here. Essentially, it's the city of progress. So this society is focused on innovation and advancing. They are very polished and structured in terms of how they function, but also how they look. Architecture, fashion, style, fitted clothing, well-tailored, high-quality materials, intricate jewelry, ornate details. And especially with the innovation and invention of hex tech, we're looking at a society that's also pretty futuristic and just looks very ahead of the times, not only in terms of what they strive to do investment and business-wise politically, but also just in terms of their relationships, much more focused on art and the finer things, culture, high-class society. And so with such a sophisticated society, we just get an overall sense of brightness and openness, golds, jewel tones, just to really convey that sense of opulence that permeates the society and just really kind of sets the tone for what you can expect when you walk in. Very gated, very secure, and very defensive in terms of all the precious developments that they're making. So in contrast to an upper class elite society like Piltover, we shift over to Zaun, which is much more working class, and instead of a Victorian, luxurious, sophisticated type of steampunk, it's much more industrial, and I would even say almost to the point of like dystopian cyberpunk. And these are people who are doing their best to survive. It's scrappy, it's a matter of being resourceful and salvaging what you can. They don't have access to hex tech or highly educated or trained inventors to help cultivate that kind of innovation and breakthrough. So they're much more relying on DIY type of approaches. Teach yourself, pull together these cogs or these scraps that you can find lying around in order to further construct buildings and territories, or even just different body parts, because it's wild in that part of town. And so there's fights, there's crime, injury, bad health care. So you got to pull together what you can, even if that means crafting an arm and a leg in order just to make it to the next day. It's smoggy, it's gritty, it's grungy, and we also have some interesting kind of luminescent colors, bright neon colors that are a nice visual contrast to what is an overall muted, darker toned society and town and surrounding environment. And in doing a little more research around Piltover and Zaun, what I found kind of interesting is how that evaluation almost reflects a little bit of kind of how our society is developing and trending towards. We're definitely seeing a much greater disparity between the classes, the upper and the lower middle class. Who? I don't know her. Piltover is on, you pick one. And so if you were to watch the Arcane series, you can certainly see the major differences there. On the hyperbolic fantasy, exaggerated angle, when I'm seeing things about people just making certain political decisions or feeling a certain type of way about inflation, it's giving working class struggling in Zaun, just trying to scrape by and being as resourceful and salvageable as they can in order to pull things together. But then we see some of the upper class and elites evangelizing these advancements in technology. It does kind of highlight some of that energy of city of progress that Piltover has in doing whatever it takes to constantly push the society or the nation forward in the guise of perhaps helping them with some of these advancements, but ultimately just maybe for a little bit of pride and vanity as well. And a little bit of a weird side tangent that I also kind of think reflects this is within Wild Rift, if you play on League of Legends, there's an event where you can kind of throw in some credits that you earn from playing to support either Zaun or Piltover, and Zaun is overwhelmingly winning. I mean, I've been kind of throwing some support behind Piltover just because I'm also kind of big on advancements, but I can definitely recognize that people all over the world, not only within the United States, are really wanting to root for the underdog and have their voices heard in ways that may not always seem obvious. And so getting past a little bit of that conversation and getting more into the characters, I think that when we look at Caitlyn, Vi, and Jinx, we can certainly see a little bit of that aesthetic spectrum between the two cities. We already discussed how Caitlyn is, along with Jace, is certainly an avatar and a great reflection and model for that high-class, sophisticated, polished, structured design to Piltover. Then we look at Vi, which we'll touch on a little bit more and covering her more specifically, how she's a little bit of a crossover. She does have a little bit of that kind of alternative, punky edge to her style, which is certainly an echo from the city of Zaun, but knowing that she is a close partner to Caitlyn and dabbles, at least within League of Legends lore, as defender for Piltover, we also see a bit more kind of structure and somewhat of refinement within her style, especially within her gauntlets, which are essentially hex tech technology. And then we look at Jinx, who is absolutely a woman of Zaun, and she very much has a bit more of that kind of grungy, punk, rebellious style that's persistent even in all the depictions that she has, but even within her default skin, it just looks like it's a little more thrown together, a little more patchwork, a little more DIY, especially with all of her different kind of weaponry and gadgets involved. Definitely a strong contrast and a far cry from Caitlyn. So it's interesting just to look at the three of them, and they also do have a bit of an interconnected relationship anyway, just to kind of better facilitate the conversation and differences in aesthetics, society, behavior, etc. around Piltover and Zaun. All right, I hope you were kind of following what I was putting down there and it was clear enough. I had an interesting time filming this because this is a bit of a different approach than I had initially taken, just kind of jumping right in. But let's move this conversation forward and now shift over to the characters, starting with Vi by just further elaborating on a bit more of her context, as well as taking a look at her various skins. She's very much a defender through and through, whether she's standing up for herself against people who might insult her or oppose her, but also to those that she cares about. And I feel like that's an aspect of her that's really well fleshed out and further elaborated upon within the Arcane series, how she was very much a protector of Jinx and how she looked up to someone that essentially saved her and her sister, who was also a fighter and a defender. So she's someone who wants to live up to being someone that can be depended upon and someone that will champion for those who are taken advantage of. What I like about her is that for a female character especially, she does have such a strong, resilient nature. Even though she's gone through quite a bit of trauma herself, she hasn't let that completely dominate her or define her. She's found a way to overcome and even almost use it to further polish and enhance who she is and what she's capable of. And I think that that's also well reflected within the Arcane series, but also is a good kind of translation to the role that she plays within the actual League of Legends game as a jungler. I don't like the jungler role, but I think that she's a great go-to for that, and she's my favorite jungler to play The jungler has to constantly be dynamic and respond to the situation, flowing between the jungle and the different lanes within the game to accomplish certain objectives, to defend team members, and to overall push towards victory. And that's very much what we can see in her mechanics: great mobility, great crowd control, and great damage output if built appropriately. And speaking of build, I think when we look at some of her key components, which is a nice, strong, solid, well-built silhouette, just to really highlight that she has the constitution and the infrastructure to handle whatever challenge that she faces, but that she's also a attractive woman. And I really love that about her character. It gives her a bit of duality between something that's more tough, strong, and solid, but also something that's a little more feminine and delicate in slightly different ways. But also her signature pink hair is certainly a standout, and it kind of almost reminds me of the pink hair that Lightning has from Final Fantasy 13, which is also a good contrast to who she is as a character, but also contrasts her dual environments. As far as Zaun, it's a bright standout against more of that kind of, again, darker, muted city and environment. But then also with Piltover, it highlights a bit more of her expressive, true to herself identity and alternative edge. But her gauntlets are obviously a very defining element to her style. Not only do they complement a bit more of that slim silhouette that she has, but it also just gives her a bit more of that tough brawler edge and pushes her more into that Piltover direction. While some of her clothing and style might be a bit more alternative and edgy and dark, we see that those gauntlets have great decoration and elaboration, which gives her that structure, polish, and refinement. Now that we have a little more contextualization around Vi, let's now move into looking a bit more closely at the various skins that she has. And again, I've loosely ranked these between least favorite to most favorite, just based on my personal taste. Starting with Demon Vi, not necessarily anything super wrong with this aesthetic. I think it has a lot of her core outfit kind of components: body confidence, great silhouette, and something that's a bit more kind of punky and alternative, especially with the boots in the mix as well. But I just don't like the demon. I'm just not on fire for a demon aesthetic. I just much more prefer and like her in a human form. Moving into Debonair Vi, this just gives me a little almost too much of a butch vibe. I like a little bit of that kind of gender fluidity that she can exercise and convey in her aesthetic. But I kind of saw it on Jace a little bit almost. Like, I don't feel like this is the best, most creative outlook for her. The gauntlets do look very nice and polished, and I think coordinate well with the vest. But outside of that, really not highlighting, I think, her femininity as great as it can, and not really also the most interesting androgynous look. Psyops Vi is interesting. She looks tough. She looks combat ready. I think this is heading more in a cool direction for her, and I love the various bullet, belt, and band elements thrown and mixed within her outfit. The gauntlets look a little standard. I don't know, it's just not the most interesting. Love the body confidence. I even like a little bit of the mask that she's wearing, but it just doesn't really speak to me as much. Primal Ambush Vi is headed a little more in an interesting direction. Maybe I just like a bit more of the kind of hairstyle that she has here, and how I think that's complemented and reflected and echoed in a little bit of the fur details that she has on her outfits. It feels a little more tribal. It feels a little more wilderness. And I think that the gauntlets are actually really beautiful here. I like a little bit more of that kind of beast shape that they take on. And even she's kind of wearing, I think, some like shorter shorts, or like it's asymmetrical. It feels a little more decorated and a little more elaborate. Neon Strike Vi, love a well-fitted bodysuit in this case for her. It just further accentuates her amazing silhouette, like I was mentioning. And the gauntlets are kind of cute with a little bit of that kind of like bear designer print on it. And I like that the boots are a little different. I like that when she wears boots like these, it's a little bit heeled. But I like the deep V to the suit and the high collar. And I like the visor that she's wearing. And it's interesting to see her with a blue hair color. Heartache Vi is, I don't really know. I like it, but I almost feel like it could have been made a little softer. I know that they really went extremes. Like Caitlyn had a really cutesy girly Heartstopper look. And so we definitely needed something a little more rigid, rugged, and tough for Vi, but it's cute in composition. The stockings, the short shorts, the shirt, and even the gauntlets are very cool. So I like some of the components, a little extra on the edginess, but it's definitely working. Heartbreaker Vi looks almost like full-blown androgyny here, which I don't mind in this case, because it still feels a little softer than just in a bit of like a suit attire. And which, wait till we get to Crystal Rose. It feels Alice in Wonderland. I like how it's very dominated by the gold. It is a bit more of an armored look, which I tend to be biased against, but I do think that it fits her, again, silhouette and shape well. Doesn't look too bulky, doesn't look like it's overly relying on the armor to be the statement. Warring Kingdoms Vi, even though there's still plenty of armored elements in the mix, this is definitely softer and we're getting clothing garments. Yet another twist, I feel like, on the cheongsam that is nice to see, cultural, Asian inspired, but we still get some like cutouts and some leg action for a little bit of peak of body confidence, which I think is really nice in contrast to all that heavy hardware that she has. And just the jade elements on the gauntlets is also a nice touch in contrast to the more of the red. Superhero Vi feels right on target. And even though, once again, similar to Jace, it's just like a bodysuit, it's not so much fashion, I do like a bit more of like the collar. It almost still seems like she's wearing a bit of a vest, and I like the taller rounded collar that she has. And this just in her gauntlets and what she typically has feels indicative in kind of close vicinity to a superhero anyway. So I just kind of like a little bit of that cohesion and alignment that she naturally has with it. Even though I very much do like Arcane Vi, I do have some mixed feelings on it. I like her default skin better. I like the jacket, even though she took it from somebody else in the story. And I like the gauntlets and just how it really highlights the true Piltover aesthetic, especially how we see it depicted in the series. Like it for what it is. It's a nice change. It's a good reflection of her in a new story and a greater expansion on her, but not like the super top fave. With Project Vi, I constantly say how I don't like armored looks and why this one is so high. I just love the luminescent components to this look. The gauntlets are my favorite part. This is the skin that I typically default to in the game. And I just like, I think the structure of the suit in this case, it is very much more kind of rigid and sharp, like a typical armored look, but I feel like we're still getting a great look at her silhouette. It still is a pretty snatched waist, still some heeled boot action, and just the luminescent visor and gauntlets, I just think takes this to another level. But Arcane Brawler Vi, love this aesthetic. It really leans into almost something a bit kind of emo-esque, especially as we see her behavior and her decline in the series. But as far as aesthetic, love the body confidence, love the kind of bandaged chest situation. We still see that she has her feminine silhouette, but she just feels more tight and tough. Love the hair change. And I like the jacket much better in this case. It's a nice evolution from the standard Arcane look, but Officer Vi has got it going on. Like an incredible set of cleavage. Like this is it. And I love, similar to Caitlyn, how the gauntlets reflect a little bit of that kind of police siren kind of design with some gold hardware sprinkled in just to really give more of that official touch, ties to her role. But it's really just that jacket and that top. Like she is giving it in this look. Obsessed with her. But it should come as no surprise that the Crystal Rose look is so great. And it does what the Debonair look didn't do. Like it still looks soft. It's a suit, but she has these incredible heels to go with it. Her gauntlets with the roses, like how it manages to balance true femininity, the true femininity that she's capable of having with something that's still kind of tough and solid and Defender-esque is amazing. And there's even like a transparent kind of like skirt element to her top as well that is just so absolutely gorgeous. Great. But now that we talked about Vi, now let's move on over to Jinx go over her story, evolution, personal style situation, and then take a look at her skins. So Jinx is very much one of those unhinged, chaotic, manic, traumatized characters. Like, we've seen these before. She was considered to be bad luck. She really experienced some strong abandonment on multiple different layers. She just wanted to help and prove herself. And I think that that desire and hunger has grown into some incredible intelligence and resourcefulness in terms of how she's able to assemble a number of crazy inventions, you can even call it. So I really like that component. And she also does have a bit of a heart. Like, we see some of that softness, I think, again, more so in the Arcane series. I think it's done such a great job to give her more justice and to really speak to her experience. Because otherwise, if we were going just based on the League of Legends lore, like, she's just a wild criminal who just wants attention, craves frenzy, and just needs her name out there in the form of graffiti and neon lights. And like I was saying earlier, that certainly manifests itself in her style as far as not only the different gadgets and utility components that she wears on her, but also her style is just a little more thrift, a little more pull together what I can and throw it on, and this is me, take it or leave it. I like the signature kind of pink, purple, blue color scheme that she typically has. Love those colors in general. And so that's, I think, my greatest affinity towards her character. Otherwise, I just think that she's a hot mess express, wild child that's a bit too over the top, but is certainly capable of some incredible things and is a force absolutely to be reckoned with. And we not only see that as far as her being exalted to an extent within the city of Zaun, just based on her kind of anarchist attitude and her resistance against the powers that be, but also within the game, she is an unpredictable, better keep her in check kind of marksman, because once she gets going, she's almost an unstoppable force, and like, you better watch out and get out of her way or else she's gonna take you down. And her default outfit, I'd say more particularly a little bit of her Arcane style inspired my outfit for today. It's just very personal style. You don't see a lot of other characters, really any characters at all, dressed like her. Like, she's put together her reality, she's put together her style, she's put together her weaponry, she's pulled what she can together to the best of her abilities. And I do like a sense of the kind of whimsical nature to her, which is also an interesting kind of contrast and gives her some duality to some of that darker, like, scary, ugly side and stuff that she's continuing to grapple with. But I just love that she's true to herself and her own, and that's very much how I'm about my personal style as well. But now let's get into these skins to kind of see how that style and that edge and that chaos manifests itself in her various aesthetics. Starting with Crime City Jinx, I don't know why I hate this one so much. Yeah, maybe like a mob gal, a criminal, I get the idea, but as far as the aesthetic, she has some cutesier, polished, well put together looks in her other skins to come, but this one, especially just how it looks, I just don't like it. I can't even really articulate. Just looks ugly. Zombie Slayer Jinx is much more closer to the vicinity of her personal style, and I feel like just thinking of her as being like a zombie apocalypse survivor, absolutely, she'd be someone who you would go to try to make it through. Love the luminescent kind of detail on the gun. But the outfit's like, okay, like, I mean, it's not really saying anything like, whoa, like, we're not getting anything too out of the box for her, but I just think it's well put together and is close enough to her style. Odyssey Jinx is giving like almost like a little bit of chaotic Guardians of the Galaxy type energy. I just don't know, like, I don't think I like the hair. It's a little more of an elaborate look. I like the gun and weaponry, love the body confidence, but like, I don't know, this one just doesn't say anything to me. Like the skull and crossbones on her shirt, but like, Project Jinx is much more interesting. I like the kind of fur or feather details on the shoulders, and I just overall like the color scheme. Like, we're getting in a direction that's like, okay, I can get into this. She almost reminds me of Vi a little bit though, which is why I didn't rank this one higher, because of the kind of pinkish hair. But I love the weaponry again, and I just really like the dominance of the purple in her overall aesthetic. And she's always giving us the body confidence, always giving us the utility. Firecracker Jinx, yeah, this is nice. It's refined, but still feels a little loose and not too tight. I feel like I just like it better than the Crime City one. Like the Crime City one was also kind of a loose dress and everything, but this one just feels a little more, I don't know. Love the cheongsam, love the boots, love the stockings. And I love the kind of like rocket thing that she has, and not too over the top with like all her typical utility elements. It still feels clean. Ambitious elf Jinx that completely fits her. All these different present toy elements, like just the gun as like a train is so cute. Love how like the Santa hat to the side on one pigtail. The boots are cute, the top is cute, the dress is cute. Like just so many cute whimsical elements that feels more holiday, feels a slightly more dressed up, but definitely still feels playful and fun, which is also true to her style. Cafe Cuties starts to get into more of that kind of charming, dressy, kind of cutesy girl style that I think that she kind of actually wears surprisingly decently and kind of fits her in a little, if done correctly. This one feels a little more up on the cutesy. Well, I feel like other ones kind of give her a little more slight controlled chaos. But I just like all the details going on here. And I like that the gun's like almost like a frosting dispenser, and obviously plenty of purple in the mix. That might maybe be the biggest reason why this one's so high. I've historically been really hard on Star Guardian Jinx just because I feel like there's so many girly, cutesy, beautiful characters that are in this roster that wear it so well. And she's a bit more of like that rough and tough alternative edgy girl. And it's just different, but I feel like it does fit her pretty well. And I like when she has more of those kind of buns or ears in the mix, and we'll see that on some following looks. It's not too over the top and frilly like a lot of the other ones that the other female characters wear, but I think it's definitely just enough to tie in with the theme, but still feel kind of loose and free and ragtag like she has the propensity to be. I feel like T1 Jinx is pretty much just an evolved form of the Star Guardian. Like it's a different form. It almost is kind of what I almost kind of wish her Star Guardian was, to be honest, with more body confidence, a cute pleated skirt situation, even some asymmetry with the sleeves, which is really interesting. And I love her boots and really just all her hardware. Like this one is so cool and fresh, but pretty much just feels like Star Guardian 2.0. Heartseeker Jinx is also cutesy and feminine, but like not too cutesy. Like, and maybe it's her expression, but she still looks like she's crazy. Like she's still capable of anything. But I just like how tightly coordinated everything is. The purple and the red is great. Weaponry are such great details and really, I think, play up the differentiation between these skins, especially this one. Gives her a little bit more of that kind of wild whimsy on top of something that looks a little more formal and polished and sophisticated. The Battle Cat Jinx, I just like love this one. I think the cat ears are such a great accessory here, and I just love the luminescent details. I'm just hugely biased towards some luminescent details, but also this one feels like more of like a tougher armored bodysuit, which for her, love that direction. She's usually more free-flowing and kind of loose with her clothing and styles, but this one feels a little more in it to win it and battle ready, but still cute and charming and fun to look at, with some of those kind of youthful elements that still roots it in some of her character and spirit. And I think the green color just really works for her. I love Glorious Jinx though, because I feel like it's almost a look at her as if she were to really get a little more kind of collected, a little more put together and carry over into Piltover. Like it's much more sophisticated, but doesn't feel too stuffy, like a big over the top heavy jacket or something too structured. It still feels like she's kind of loose and free, but has some amazing opulent and elegant and sophisticated elements to play up her style and give her a little more elevation than usual. Just love the mix between the gold and the purple, and just with the white and the black to break it up. Like it's just honestly quite perfect. But there is genuinely something so signature about her Arcane look. Like one of my favorite Arcane looks out of all the characters. Like it just fits her so well, is much better than her default outfit, to be honest. Like, this is the go-to key Jinx look in my mind now. We still have a similar kind of like cropped top situation, but it's not a full bra. And we still have a little bit of those striped pants, but they just look a little more distinguished. And there's just, once again, more detail to everything that she has going on here. It just looks more put together and tight in this one. But Prestige Battle Cat Jinx is also just as cute. And even though this one feels very much more body covered, and I think just the white makes it feel more fresh and more like ascended. Still some luminescent details, kind of still prefer the green aesthetic on her, but this one just feels tangibly elevated, more gold, more sophisticated, more refined, but still just as chaotic, playful, and fun, which is a good balance. But I feel like the chroma crash is truly Jinx. She's all about the graffiti. She's all about making her signature known, her calling card in terms of how she kind of tags the areas in which she's caused some mayhem. And I feel like this is her doing it in style. The green fits so well. I just like still what is a free and loose and sporty kind of style and outfit for her. But it feels a little more fashion and style, not so much DIY patchwork put together, more so like she went shopping for a cool sporty look and she's about to paint the town. And I just really like that for her. Obviously more League of Legends stuff to come, more characters to come, as well as plenty of other things. You already know how I do, but until the next video, I'll talk to you later.